Track there from Pistol Youth called Happy Bills, and before that was Miriam Clancy, one called Life Extraordinary here on Kiwi. Time now is 12 minutes past 9.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Well, joining me now in the Kiwi studio is David Suzuki, co-founder of the David Suzuki Foundation. He's an award-winning scientist, environmentalist and broadcaster as well. He's very well known for his radio and television programs that explain the complexities of natural sciences in a compelling and easy way for everyone to understand. He joins me in the Kiwi studio right now. Hello to you, David.
Hi.
Nice to have you in.
It's good to be here.
Now, you're here in New Zealand releasing a documentary, which kind of, I don't know, does the documentary really sum up your perspective on where the world is going right now?
Well, no, it's not so much that. It's a feature film. It's been released in theaters across North America. And it really is based on this idea in universities. Often an academic, when he's at the end of his career, will be asked to give a last lecture.
Yeah.
And kind of summarize a career of time spent studying whatever. And so we got this idea, well, why don't we give what became known as a legacy lecture? I'm going to be 75 next month. And, I'm in the last part of my life. I call it the death zone. And damn it all, at this point, I think an elder has a responsibility to say, what the hell have I learned over a lifetime? Because you want to pass something on to the coming generations.
But you're sure to learn a whole lot more in the next 20 years or so. No. Go on.
No, I think this is the most critical. People go, oh, don't talk about being the death zone or whatever.
Yeah.
But gosh, if we can't face the fact that most of our lives are over by this stage. Every year for me now is a gift. And I'll keep plugging away as I go. But surely to goodness, you want to kind of reflect on what you've learned and pass some things on. And that's what I tried to do in this legacy lecture.
Now, you've been communicating these messages of environmentalism and looking after the environment around us and the world around us and the people around us for decades now. Things don't seem to be getting better at all, do they?
We're losing big time. The reality, I was just in Melbourne debating with 5 other panel members, why is environmentalism failing? First, you have to say, look, the environmental movement's been very, very successful. It started in 1962 when Rachel Carson published Silent Spring about pesticides.
Yes. Very
quickly, millions of people were involved. When her book came out, there wasn't a single department of the environment in any government on the planet.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
But because of the environmental movement, we have Clean Air Acts and Clean Water Acts, endangered species legislation, and parks protecting millions and millions of hectares around the world. So in that sense, the environmental movement was very successful.
It's interesting you should bring up Rachel Carson, though, because, in this modern world with the internet and everything, her name has really been sullied by a few people.
Well, it's been the chemical industry, and certainly the people that believe that technology is wonderful, and and there are now people saying, well, the biggest threat to people in the developing world has been abandoning DDT to control malaria and all this other stuff. They're not looking at the big picture. There's a tremendous amount of self-interest involved in here. We know, for example, that there is a very strong, and the reason I say we're losing is that the science was in the 1980s. Scientists acknowledged it, the public was concerned, and what's happened in the last 20 years is the fossil fuel industry, as well as very rabid right-wing people like the Koch brothers in the United States, have been pouring, not millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into a campaign of disinformation. So you can go on the internet, you can find dozens of websites that say climate change is junk science.
Yeah.
Well, you got to be more critical about it than that. But certainly what's happened is the public is much more confused about what's going on. And then you see all the vested interest groups. We're in a period, I don't call it climate change anymore, I call it climate chaos. And when you look in Queensland, in Australia, when the flood started hitting, what were the first things that came up? The coal industry, my God, the coal industry shut down, and this is a huge economic hit. Wait a minute, folks, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to ask. Maybe there's a relationship between that industry and this climate chaos that's going on.
Yeah.
I gather in New Zealand, you have very strong agricultural interests that don't like the fact that their animals are farting methane or whatever, these greenhouse gases. But I'm sorry, we're going to have to face what the science says and stop all of this disinformation and confusion that's going on.
Is the problem that we seem to be a species that we have this information and knowledge, but we don't react upon it as a group until it really affects us?
Well, I think that my position is that the key to our great success was that we are the only animal that really invented a notion of a future. Because we have this concept of a future, we could look ahead and say, gee, if I continue to do this, there are dangers over there, but if I stop doing that and do this, there are opportunities. I believe foresight was the great advantage we have over all the other creatures that got us to where we are. Now we've got scientists and supercomputers that extend our ability to look ahead, but now we're running right on into the corporate agenda. And the corporate agenda is based on the need to make profit, and that then, when our governments become cheerleaders for the corporations, we're in deep trouble. Because in the name of profit, all kinds of terrible things happen. We know from the tobacco industry that they knew for years the science was in that smoking was bad for your health. They deliberately did everything they could to deny the reality of that evidence, to say, no, the evidence isn't in. And guess what? Many of the people that were involved in denial about tobacco effects are the same gang that are now saying global warming, climate change is junk science.
And it's a small gang, right? It's only a tiny gang of
it's a tiny gang,
people,
but because they've got hundreds of millions of dollars backing them up, they've been very, very effective. And I think that what we've got to do is cut through all of that. What we need are elders, and this is what I see as my role in life now. As an elder, you know that I'm not driven by the need to have sex or fame or money or power. That what I say has got to be more credible because I don't have a hidden agenda. Elders have got to get up and start saying, look, I've looked back at a lifetime. The world when I was born as a child is completely gone. It's a different world. And maybe they ought to be talking to young people and saying, we've done a bad job. You know, we've behaved like Groucho Marx, who said, why should I worry about future generations? What have they done for me? We partied as if there's no tomorrow.
But then the turnaround argument from the young people is, the old people, every generation, they've always feared for the younger generation in their future, you know?
Well, I mean, when you think in terms of punk or whatever that's going on, maybe that's true. But what I find is that young people have got the message that their parents certainly did not get about the state of the planet, the biosphere and its ability to support us. In fact, young people feel very, very frustrated. And so in Canada, I don't know how it is in New Zealand, the group that is taking less and less time or spending less and less time in politics is youth. Many are just approaching the age of voting. They're not voting. Why? Because they see that politicians aren't concerned about their issues. And I say to young people, you know very well, your future is now at stake. Old guys like me, whatever happens in the next few years, going to have very little consequence for my life. But what is or is not done now will reverberate through the lives of youth. Even a young guy like you, you're going to feel the impact of this for the rest of your life. You've got the greatest stake in this, and you've got to go and become involved in the political process and get up and start saying, stop being so focused on the next election.
Well, that's right, and there's an election cycle that goes around and around. But so integral to this is journalism, though, and the role that journalism plays and the media plays to actually getting this message out there. And the problem has been this need to find balance in every single story.
We have we have a triple problem. One is that most journalists have no idea about science. This is not a part of they're scientifically illiterate. Another major problem is that the media now have been cornered, in my country at least, by a few very powerful individuals or corporations. So if you look in Australia at the impact of the Murdoch control, this is huge. And they shape, I mean, you just have to look at Fox News in the United States and see that they shape the nature of the discussion and what gets out as so-called news. But the third thing is that journalists, in the name of balance, feel, well, if you're going to put a person saying climate change is happening, we got to do something, then you have to balance that with someone who's saying, no, it's junk science. Well, the reality is that balance is so unbalanced because it implies the scientific community is split 50-50. The reality is it's 99.9 against 0.1.
Yeah.
You know, we have deliberately, and there have been a number of analyses looking at the number of reports that have come out in the last 10 years that say, oh, yes or no, that are balanced. And it's clear that we in the media have perpetrated the notion that there's still a disagreement here. There isn't.
Well, the movie is screening in Auckland at the Rialto Cinema. It is called Force of Nature, the David Suzuki movie.
6 o'clock tonight, and I'll be there.
6 o'clock tonight at the Rialto, and you'll be giving a chat afterwards, or?
Yes, I'll introduce it and then have a discussion after. The important point about Force of Nature is that it's a summary of my thinking over a lifetime, but I want it to be used as a platform to discuss. That's its value, and I hope that it's going to be released to groups. I know that one of the programs is to sell it to various organizations, to show it, to raise money for themselves. And to me, this is very exciting because it's a community that can then discuss it afterwards.
Excellent. David, thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy your rest of your stay in New Zealand.
Always is.
Track here from John White. This is called The Boy I Saw on That Day. It's Kiwi.